Hello, this is Ben, and in this video we want to deal with the question, who is greater? Which God is greater? The God of Christianity, Jesus, or the God of Islam, Allah? Now, to understand this question, we need to think about righteousness and the punishment versus reward for righteousness. Or you can think of it in other terms, heaven and hell. Okay? In Islam, punishment for doing evil is very important, and there will be a lasting, eternal punishment for evildoers. That is absolutely critical in Islam. So, an example of this is Allah sent Muhammad, and Muhammad laid down all sorts of rules that the true follower of God, or Allah, must follow. So to be a true Muslim, all you have to do is say, there's no God but God, and Muhammad is his prophet. Now, the standards of righteousness in Islam are actually not as strict as they are in Christianity. Christianity says if you do the slightest little thing wrong, if you are anything other than absolutely perfect, then you deserve to burn in hell forever. That is core teaching of Christianity, Romans 3:23. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And Romans 6:23, the wages of sin is death. And Jesus, raises the bar and thinks, he says, you have heard it said, love your friend and hate your enemy. But I say to you, if you are even angry, I say to you, love your enemy and pray for those who persecute you. Jesus said in Matthew 5, if you are even angry with someone, you are a murderer in your heart. Jesus said if you look at a woman lustfully, you have committed adultery in your heart. So Jesus says there cannot be even the thought, even the desire, even the slightest little bit of sin. Whereas in Islam, the standard for avoiding the punishment for sin is not so high. And in fact, I can't lay out a specific rule because there's so many rules, because you basically get very specific. So like, whatever Muhammad did, you did that. And like, if Muhammad, literally one of the rules is if Muhammad walked in the bathroom right foot first, you walk in the bathroom right foot first. Muhammad did this, you do this. And it's very specific. And the thing about being specific is you know exactly what's required of you. But it's not perfection, it's doable. It's not absolute, total, sinless perfection. Even if you were to follow the requirements perfectly, you would be nowhere near as holy or as perfect as God. So God doesn't hold you to a standard of perfection. So the interesting thing is, the God of Christianity has higher standards. But let's look at another question. How does forgiveness work in Islam? And it actually works quite differently than it was in Christianity. In Islam, you are expected to be good. But if you mess up, you sort of get a time period to get back on the right track. If you don't get back on the right track fast enough, then you have done what's translated as exceeding the limits. And it even says at one point, Allah has no love for those who exceed the limits. And from my investigation, it's different time periods for different things, but basically it boils down to about a month before you need to get yourself back on track. So again, forgiveness, there's a ton of stuff that you're not going to be forgiven for. Whereas in Christianity, you can be forgiven for any amount of sin and evil. Anything. Okay? So in Christianity, as long as you receive forgiveness that is offered to you before you ask for it, then you're forgiven. As long as you receive it. Alright, so the thing is, there are tons of stuff, tons of bad things you could do that in Islam you would not be forgiven for because you exceeded the limits. You exceeded the grace period. Whereas in Christianity, it doesn't matter what you've done, as long as you receive the forgiveness, you're forgiven. And you don't even have to get back on track, or in Islam there's all sorts of stuff you have to do to get your life back together and start living right, to be forgiven. You know, in many cases there's certain holy actions you have to take to sort of make up for the bad that you did, and then you have to stay on track and do a lot of good, and then you have forgiveness. And you can't, and in Islam you can never say for sure if you have the forgiveness, because ultimately only God can judge you that accurately and know for sure. So forgiveness, who is more forgiving? The Christian God. And so the point I want to make to you in this video is that the Christian God has both higher standards of goodness, but is also more forgiving than Allah. Jesus has higher standards of goodness, but is also more forgiving. Hope this video makes sense. Thank you for your time.